Hello there, good people. Welcome to It's a Shaw Thing. I'm your host, Rob Shaw. Fantasy football might be done, but there's still plenty to discuss today. We're going over the running back rankings. Number one in all of fantasy football, not LT, not Steven Jackson. Jackson, I don't think even made the list. DeAngelo Williams. Yes, the same running back in Carolina that was supposed to lose his job to Jonathan Stewart. Well, he did not. And 1,515 rushing yards later, DeAngelo Williams is the number one running back in all of fantasy football. By the way, 20 total touchdowns, not bad. And this is the most important stat in my mind, efficiency, yards per carry. How about 5.5? A remarkable year for DeAngelo Williams. That guy is the number one amongst the rankings. Number two, also a little bit of a surprise, Michael Turner for the Atlanta Falcons. He came over after backing up LT. Next thing you know, he's better than LT for fantasy managers. 1,699 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns. And by the way, it was workmanlike. 376 carries. This guy had huge fantasy returns. Next up, number three, not a surprise, Adrian Peterson. More rushing yards than anyone else. 1,760. He also had 10 touchdowns. Only concern, 4 fumbles, but who's complaining for AP? Next up, Thomas Jones of the New York Jets. 1,312 rushing yards are solid, but the 15 total touchdowns are even better. Brett Favre came, and it was Jones who really had the better fantasy value, even though apparently he had some words for Favre on Hot 97 in New York shortly after. Number 5, Matt Forte. We're talking about a rookie running back here. Get to know him. He's going to have a great rivalry between him and Peterson. I like what's going on in that division. 1,238 rushing yards. But the big thing about this guy, 477 receiving yards as well. 12 touchdowns. Matt Forte, the best playmaker on the Chicago Bears. And finally, we're up to LT, LaDainian Tomlinson. Yes, he didn't give you what you expected, but at least he gave you 1,110 rushing yards, 12 total touchdowns, and he also had 426 receiving yards, which is actually a little bit better than years past. So if it comes to points per reception, he helped you out a little more than he expected there, but everything else definitely further down the line than you hoped. And now we have a pleasant surprise at number 7, another rookie running back, Steve Slayton of the Houston Texans. Amon Green expected to start there, but it was Slayton who starred. 1,282 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, and also big receiving numbers, 377 receiving yards. Steve Slayton, one of the best fantasy rookie running backs in the NFL. Next up, probably your number 2 or number 3 pick overall in your fantasy draft, Brian Westbrook, a disappointing season, just 936 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, 402 receiving yards, solid, but those injuries crept right back on him. Number 9, talk about injuries. Clinton Portis, huge rushing numbers, 1,487, but just 9 touchdowns, 218 receiving yards. And anyone who had this guy when it came to the fantasy playoffs couldn't be pleased that his numbers seemed to be in decline at year's end. And finally, the number 10 fantasy rookie, not rookie, just running back in general, Maurice Jones-Drew. Now, when it comes to rushing, he's not your typical rusher, only 824 rushing yards. Not what you hoped for, but the good news is this. 14 total touchdowns and more than any receiving yard, other running back when it comes to receiving yards, 565. So Maurice Jones-Drew rounds out the top 10. Names we didn't mention, maybe Steven Jackson, Larry Johnson, certainly plenty of surprises this season. Keep those names in mind when it comes to next year and your fantasy football draft.
Think you can complete the drive? Play today and get an automatic entry to win daily prizes, 2 tickets to the big game, and a brand new car. Start your drive today at opensports.com.